All right. In a final recording, I just want to talk very briefly about the group project. That is down here, and it is the organizational behavior audit. So that's 25% of the overall grade of the class. So the group project, I call it the organizational behavior audit. I guess I left that word out of there. There are three main objectives to this. One is to apply conceptual frameworks learned in class to learn more about managing behavior in organizations. Another is to provide an organization that your team chooses with evidence-based diagnosis of some kind of internal functioning issue, offer some advice on areas of improvement and areas of further attention. So this is moving from learning the material factually in terms of reading and applying things to cases, learning the material in terms of applying it to yourself and developing your own kind of working knowledge and application of the class, and then moving to the idea of a consulting role to be able to, in a way, look at an organization, look at some problems they're facing, and leverage some of the learning you're doing in CEMBA and in our class to think about how would you go about understanding that problem, accessing evidence about that problem, and then identifying some potential paths forward for the organization. This is a large field study, and it will be in an organization of your team's choice. So a couple of things to point out here. I've mentioned before that we don't start the organizational behavior class until about October 5th. And that means that you have a month here in September where you're starting to work on other classes. But if we lose an entire month in terms of this project, an already kind of impressive timeline and workload that you're going to have across all the classes is going to get even that much harder. So I highly recommend that you and your team schedule some time in one of your next team meetings to review the assignment details. So they are posted on the Canvas website. So open up that document, maybe download that document, and work your way through it to understand this project. I highly recommend you look at the entire syllabus and the topics we're covering in class. Have some conversation within your team about which of those topics seem most interesting and attractive to you, and maybe rank order some, like your preferences for what you'd like the topic to be about, which will be a little bit fluid based on conversations you have with the organization that you choose. Again, within the next week or so here, I recommend that you brainstorm and identify a few potential organizational clients that you could work with. In the past, we've had teams work with an organization that one of the members is employed with. I think that can be good. It can be sometimes a little trickier just because sometimes if one of your team members is an employee, sometimes both leaders and employees of that organization may be a little reluctant to share completely forthright information. So there's a trade-off there. On the other hand, it can be a really strong learning experience because if one of your team members knows the organizational context in great detail, that can add richness to what you're trying to do in the project. So again, pro and con, it doesn't matter to me, but you need to think through the benefits of picking a company that one of you is working for against one that you're not. I've also had situations in class where a team has done the project on an organization that one of their classmates is a member of, but not a team member. So that's another possibility. Wide ranges from parts of very, very large corporate America here in the Twin Cities to small nonprofits or schools or other organizations. So it's your choice. However, if you do end up deciding to do this project in a very large organization, really you need to choose a subunit. Maybe not even a business division, might be too large. Maybe just a smaller department to make the scope appropriate. So one of the things that you'll have to do with this project is turn in the project brief, and that information is also on the Canvas website. And the reason for the brief, I'm not looking for a lot other than for you to tell me which organization, which general topics, kind of what your initial timeline looks like, what your methods of data collection are going to look like, so that I know you're working and moving forward. Having said that, the more information you provide there, the more feedback I can help you with early on. And one of the most important things I find in that brief, that project sort of brief and planning stage here in September, early October, is the scoping. Because oftentimes I see teams excited to address a lot of topics that we cover in organizational behavior, but those would quickly become too large in scope. So I want you to be thinking about identifying one topic, and I think inside of that there can be multiple dimensions. So for instance, if you decided you wanted to do something on organizational culture, great. Then you can look at a values analysis. You could look at kind of a understanding of the belief system and artifacts, what the socialization process looks like, etc. Those could be subtopics within organizational culture. What I don't think is possible is to say we want to do organizational culture and teamwork, or we want to do teamwork and motivation. Sometimes you can figure out a narrow, carefully scoped project that addresses a couple topics, but small parts of those. But narrow and deep is better than just peanut butter spread around. So every now and then, even with this kind of advice, I see a paper that has a page that almost is like every class in 8 classes, and then it's a very superficial project. So err on depth, err on narrow scope, thoroughness, evidence, and delivery. Evidence can range from interviewing people, conducting surveys, getting archival data. So I've had projects before where they've been able to get engagement survey data from the company or some other kinds of data that's already being collected that they can analyze and help support the project. So again, all those things are things to think about. Please feel free to contact me. Please feel free to make a meeting with me and some or all of your team if you'd like to talk about these things. Feel free to send emails if you're thinking of ideas. But most importantly, I want to just emphasize with this video that just get moving now. Very quickly, the sort of tidal wave of stuff is starting, and the sooner you can get your team working on this project, understanding its scope and deliverables, and starting to work on a project timeline, the better for all of you, and you'll probably feel a little less stress as we get into November and December. So just with respect to the pieces, again, this is all on Canvas, but I think it's important to highlight that there's 3 pieces that make up the grading for this project. The most significant and large portion is the class report. And take a look carefully online in the project details about that. That is a paper, and it's a paper that you're writing to me as the audience, and therefore the depth and detail of that should be the integration and application of reading and concepts and course material alongside what you did and learned in this organization. And also, please be very careful to note that a significant final portion of that paper should be about your team reflecting on what you learned about the topic and what you learned about this process of basically consulting and advising on people-related issues through this project. That's what's kind of going on in this class report. The client report, this is something that you will negotiate with your organization in terms of what you're giving them. It can be a PowerPoint presentation. It can be a brief itself or some kind of paper or white paper that you give to them. You will figure that out with them. The one thing I'd say, though, is that from my standpoint, I need to see something more than just a deck of slides with no backup information. So if I see slides, 10 slides that you gave in a presentation, each with 4 or 5 bullet points, but nothing else in there, it's going to be very hard for me to understand what the substance of that report was to your client. So alongside of that, I would expect to see some detailed notes or explanation of what you presented to them, how it was received, a little bit of backup around that if you did in fact use PowerPoint as a presentation or some version of presenting software. And then finally, the last thing is you will be asked to provide your client with a evaluation sheet from us that they will scan and send back to us. And so this is a little bit of just an accountability point, just to make sure that you conducted yourselves professionally and completed this project in the way that you said you would. Generally speaking, I usually see that organizations are extremely happy with these projects and the feedback they're able to get from our CEMBA teams, but just note that that's one final piece that you need to make sure logistically you take care of as the end of the semester closes down with this project. So again, it's all on Canvas. I just wanted to briefly introduce it so you get thinking about this and moving forward with topic selection and your organization selection sometime here in the next couple weeks. As always, feel free to check with me with follow-up questions, or if you're thinking about one organization versus another, in my opinion on the challenge or benefit of doing one versus another, give me a call, send me an email, catch me in the hallway, and we can talk that over. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you all in just a few weeks.